Hello, my beautiful soul, and welcome back. Today, I want to share about how I healed old mother and father wounds and really created the relationship with my parents that I've always dreamed of and always wanted as a child, but was so far off and seemed incredibly unobtainable. So, I'm going to be sharing like three key steps that were really crucial in the process and hopefully help you do the same because I think as children, we have this natural, innate desire to want this unconditionally loving relationship with our parents. And due to everyone's collective traumas and the belief patterns and potentially like societal or cultural or religious programming and all these different things that are mixed in the big soup pot that makes us up, we don't always get the unconditional love that we wanted. And so, although I know deep down, like I know I'm incredibly blessed and I had so many privileges and luxuries in my childhood that not everyone has, it also came with a lot of challenges. And as a very highly sensitive soul and very in tune to emotions and energies, I was picking up on so much and carrying so much at a really young age because of that. And as I got older, it led to definitely like some bitterness, some anger, some resentment towards both of my parents for different things, frustration around like why did they do things the way that they did, or if they could have just done it this way, things would have been so different. And if you've been on the healing path in your own life, you know that stage where you are doing the work and uncovering the layers, and you see how these possibly small but actually very pivotal moments made up who you are. And at times it can be really easy to look at that with a lens of kind of judgment or frustration because you're like, that one thing created such a deep imprint or such a deep wound as I got older. And it didn't have to happen, or it didn't need to be said, or, it came from this lower place. And then that creates even more layers if we hold on to it and if we don't have the tools to heal and release and bring in more compassion and forgiveness. So that leads me to the first part, which is going to be about forgiveness. But before I get into that, I want to preface that every single experience is unique. So take what resonates and leave what doesn't. Because obviously, if you experienced extreme abuse, then me sitting here telling you to forgive might be very triggering. It might not feel like something you're ready for or that you're available to, and that's fine. Honor where you're at and honor your situation. Because, as I said, my personal experiences in childhood might seem very different than yours. They might seem very simple or easy compared to yours. So, this isn't to compare or say that it's a standard, but I do want to share the things that have really helped me. So, forgiveness is step number one that I personally began towards my parents back in 2015. It was such a key time in my life. That was when I was taking my first solo trip, and at that time working through a lot of wounds towards my dad for the ways that I felt very abandoned and unworthy because of the ways that he did and didn't show his love and how busy he was and certain things he had done over the years towards my brother and I. And we've talked about it and healed it all now, but at the time I had a lot of anger towards him. And I also had a lot of my mom's narrative because they were divorced, and she obviously had her judgments and opinions about the things he'd been doing wrong. So I was just holding so much. And I teach forgiveness and compassion as one of my steps inside my Thrive program because it's so important, and I can't explain enough how freeing it is when you forgive someone else. Because a lot of times, obviously, we want to continue to hold it against them, the mistakes that they made or the fact that they caused us pain. But it's not about invalidating your emotions or invalidating your experience. And it's not about justifying what they did and saying, like, oh, it was okay. Not at all. It's just about setting yourself free in the present moment by no longer carrying and holding on to this thing. So I'll never forget, I was floating in the ocean in Sri Lanka, and I had just come across the Ho'oponopono prayer fairly recently. And I remember saying that prayer towards my dad. And as I was doing it, I went from this state of anger and resentment to all the times that he hadn't shown up for me, and just started bursting out crying as my subconscious brought forward all the times that he was there. And it was like memories of when my brother had passed away and I had just flown back to Winnipeg, and my dad like ran through the airport to give me the biggest hug. Um, and the whole drive home, like, where he was holding my hand, and it was just like the deepest unspoken love. Um, and likewise, when I had my car accident a few years after that, once again, flew back home afterwards. And the whole drive home, he was like holding my hand, and it was just this deep, like, this really strong grip. And these moments where I had kind of dismissed them because I had been so busy collecting evidence of the reasons why I was mad at him and the reasons why I wanted to think that he hadn't done enough. And yet, in the grand scheme of things, I actually saw I had a list of like the most important times, and he was there for me, including certain times in my travel or when there were things going wrong, or at different times in my life when I was in like a financial strap. He came through and supported me in those different ways. And it allowed me to shift from the frequency of anger to a frequency of gratitude, and really opening my heart a lot more to feel the love that he had always been trying to show me in his own way. So when we bring forgiveness into the space and we can understand that, our parents are always doing the best with what they know, and they have their own programming, and also they're just like a wounded child who's grown into this adult who's trying the best they can, but knows that they don't really have a freaking clue what they're doing, right? They're navigating this whole human experience very blind, just as I am and you are. When we have that higher level perspective shift brought in, it creates such a space for compassion and understanding. So, again, seeing that it's not to justify if there's been abuse or mistreatment, but it's just to help free yourself from holding it and making it mean something about you being unworthy or you not being good enough, and realizing that like this was possibly the best that they could do, and they were actually operating at a full capacity. And I know for myself that actually my dad always felt very disappointed, and like I know it broke his heart that I didn't feel he was there and that he couldn't be there for me more. So it's like, if he's holding that already, why am I adding to that? And adding my own anger or my own like list of things. Remember when you did these things and like how dare you, right? Now I'm just piling up on his already mounting pile of shame from his own life and his own traumas and his own things that he hasn't dealt with. So that leads me into part two, which wouldn't have been possible if I hadn't already started doing my own work. And I think, at least I'll speak for myself personally, I always had this frustration that my parents didn't know better or didn't try better or didn't try in different ways. Again, that's coming from a limited perception, right? And when we're in it, we think we know 100% of the truth, but we don't actually know someone else's perspective. And the longer I spent waiting for my parents to change, the more frustrated and angry I became. Because the more my mind was focused on all the ways they weren't measuring up or they weren't being who I wanted them to be. And it's like this stubborn, controlling, control issues towards like, why aren't you meeting my expectations? And why aren't you changing for me? And it was in the beginning of my healing journey that I realized actually, as I did my own healing and as I worked through these different wounds and gave my inner child more love and worked on reparenting and worked on the forgiveness, worked on giving myself what had been lacking, that my relationship with both of my parents began to thrive and flourish. And we came to a place where I was no longer meeting them in an energy of blame or judgment or finger pointing. And I was meeting them in an energy of, can I share this huge breakthrough that I had today that has helped me understand myself more and also understand you more? And we went from a place of not really having that kind of open communication and everyone just being hyper independent and keeping their emotions to themselves, to sharing that openly and being able to have these beautiful healing conversations where I could calmly sit with my parents and say, you know, when this thing happened as a child, it made me feel really hurt, or it created this belief in me, and I've held it my whole life. And they could sit there openly and know that I'm not blaming them and I'm not shaming them. And they could also say, wow, I didn't realize that it did that. And I never meant for it to create this belief, right? If we don't have those conversations, it becomes very easy for our human mind to continue to paint someone as the bad guy and continue to think that they are the one who made all the mistakes and are the reason that you're struggling in life or made you a certain way that you are, when in reality, they probably didn't even realize that that was happening. And again, everyone's operating at the level of consciousness that they have. So if their level of consciousness was very stressed or overwhelmed or in survival mode, as so many in these previous generations and even still my generation, I don't know what generation you are. I'm just realizing that as I say that, like, but most generations have struggled with security and safety, and they are kind of in this shaky loop and this place of a lot of trauma. And from that state of being, you're usually not super aware of the ways that you're impacting someone else because you're so tunnel visioned on your own survival. So my parents were very focused on survival for themselves, but also for the family, right? And yet, as a child, I didn't fully understand that their focus on these things was actually benefiting me in a different way. even though they weren't able to focus the attention or like the nurturing care at certain times. Okay? So these conversations and the doorways that became open from my healing became a huge catalyst for our journeys moving forward and the ability for me to continue to bring them along in my life. And there was a time where I did just feel like I'm independent enough. I'll make it on my own. I'll figure out how to do this. And I can be harsh sometimes to cutting people out of my life. And I didn't want to do that with them. And yet I was willing to because it wasn't always healthy or happy. Um, but I'm so grateful. Like, I cannot imagine not having them in my lives the way that they are now. And again, it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't focused on my own healing first. Because as I shifted, I could then kind of call them and invite them and share and bring these things forward. And naturally, actually, both of them saw my changes and saw me being lighter and happier and healthier. And that inspired and intrigued them to be more open to, like, how did she get there? What was she doing? We want to do the same. Um, Before I get into the third one, this is actually something I teach and I offer inside one of my quantum healing hypnosis courses. It is called Connect, and it's all about your relationship. So it's not only your relationship with self, as in healing your inner child and really strengthening your connection to your multidimensional self, your higher self, and to God as the eternal mother and father, which I'll get into in a second. But it also has to do with calling in your soul family and friends and really restructuring the consciousness around your relationships so that you're no longer attracting and operating with these lower templates of drama or negative relationship energies, and really connecting to these divine templates so that you can call in healthy, loving relationships. Which is what brings me to the third thing that really helped me was the quantum healing work. And two specific modalities I want to touch on very quickly here and share about so that you can begin doing it in your own life, whether I see you inside Connect or whether you just practice this on your own, is the mother and father wounding, as well as seeing my true mother and father, my true parent, as God, and realizing that my earth parents are just that. They are truly just like me. We're all souls having a human experience, and I signed up to incarnate with them just as they signed up to incarnate with me. And I really believe in soul contracts and in these paths that are carved out before we come into the earthly plane. I look at certain things that I once was frustrated that they both embodied, and now I see like these were pivotal parts that I was here to learn and integrate at a young age and heal so that I could actually teach on it. And it's such a deep part of my life's purpose that wouldn't be the same if I had different parents. So, through quantum healing hypnosis and getting into that state where I'm in the quantum realm and connecting with our higher selves, having the conversations that maybe at times are difficult to have in the 3D, and you need to process something and get it out of your energetic body or your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body. Having these conversations with our higher selves, being able to express openly to my mom or to my dad about things that are going on, or things that have hurt me or caused pain, or just the ways I wish things had been different, as well as having those loving connections to thank them and to see the higher perspective of everything that they brought in and the gifts that they gave me along the way, whether I saw them at first or not, allowed me to bring that into the physical reality and really shift my perspective. So I do this work every day. I spend at least an hour, if not more, and I've been doing it for like 4 years now daily. And it's this constant process of restructuring my consciousness around old memories and the energetic imprint that they had. So, where something created this like strong trauma or this really strong emotional charge, being able to heal that in the subconscious and the energetic realms so that it no longer has that level of charge, and so that I can stay in a more harmonious, balanced state and continue coming back to unconditional love. And seeing that these are fractals of God in human form. So it's God expressing itself through my parents, just as I am a fractal of God in human form. God expressing itself. We're literally all just God expressing itself and connecting to one another and reflecting from our different states of consciousness, reflecting from our different life experiences and beliefs and constructs of reality. And that has allowed me to realize that they are truly the greatest guides in assisting me for where I'm meant to be. And that doesn't mean that I have to continue to cower or play the child role. Sometimes it means that I'm setting healthy boundaries or that I'm having that difficult conversation and speaking up for myself. Sometimes it's like teaching them how to treat me because I don't want to be treated the way they think is normal. And these are just examples, right? But you're able to really create and catalyze huge shifts in the physical reality when you start to see that higher perspective of the relationship dynamic and the role that each person is playing in your life. So, mainly in this video, obviously, we're talking about the mom and the dad and the mother and father, and noticing the ways that maybe at certain times they were not operating from the highest level programming, and shifting that in my perception and in my awareness to realize that it doesn't mean I wasn't worthy, and to see that the eternal mother and father God knows that I am good enough and created me a certain way and loves me unconditionally. And I can basically like return to that truth so that I feel unconditionally loved and held and wrapped in the energy of Source and that immortal consciousness that is God. So it's really, really profound because it also alleviates the pressure on your parents. As I said, they're obviously just humans. Yes, they're God, but they're also just humans. And so they're going to make mistakes. They're not going to be perfect. And it's from that child perspective that I think so many of us have. We're expecting perfection from them unconsciously and putting them on a pedestal where they can never possibly be perfect. They can never possibly meet that standard. They are going to make mistakes. They're going to let us down. And by surrendering that and handing that over and staying connected to the fact that God is the eternal mother and father who is able to match that standard and hold me perfectly and support me in the exact ways that I need, it's like I take that pressure off my physical parents and we all get to have a nice sigh of relief. And then we all get to come back together from a more loving state of being. So It's been huge. It's been so beautiful to witness this and to steward this shift. And as I said, it definitely hasn't always been easy. It came with a lot of growth and growing curves and learning lessons, but it's it's worth it. Like truly the most incredible thing to be able to do. So, I'm going to wrap this up here. I hope this was helpful. And I hope it inspires you to take action in your own way around the beliefs that you're having, the energy that you're holding, maybe the expectations or past experiences that you're still clinging tightly to, and surrendering that, finding that connection to a higher power as well as to your higher self so that you can see the higher perspective that each person is playing and create new relationship templates moving forward, which is ultimately the most beautiful thing. And that is how we continue to ripple out across the planet. If you want more help with this, as I said, I've got an incredible quantum healing hypnosis course filled with all the trainings, all the hypnosis and healing recordings, so you can just sit back, relax, tune in, and listen, and allow me to guide your subconscious through this process of releasing and reprogramming, and then bring that into the physical and notice huge changes in your life from there. The link for that is down below to get started. Otherwise, if you found this video helpful, please make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. And I will see you again on the next video.